Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 53 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is Reena Friedman Watts, a producer who spent years working behind the scenes on The Jerry Springer Show and creating content that's reached audiences all around the world. She's the host of the Better Call Daddy podcast, where she has candid conversations that really bring out the best in her guests. Today, we turn the mic around to hear Reena's own story. If you'd like to support the show, head over to the About section where you'll find a link to my Linktree. It has everything from social media pages and merch to the website and much more. Like, share, follow, comment, or leave a rating. Every little bit goes a long way and I truly appreciate it. Now, here's the interview. Reena, welcome to Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yes, I am super excited to be here and I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And likewise as well, a really big fan of what you have been doing as well. So on that, you have had a career in television production, podcast production. Take us back to the beginning. Like, how did you get into the television production side of it, especially with a certain gig that you had for a while with, one Jerry Springer, as it were?
That's where it pretty much all began. I would say even before that, though, like my family always glamorized the entertainment industry. My dad always wanted a show of his own. That's why I even started the Better Call Daddy show. He's a ham himself. And from a young age, I would put on little performances for my parents and grandparents. And I used to love to sing. And I went to a youth performing arts school. I kind of feel like my people are creatives and artists and musicians. And I feel like some of that fed into me wanting to work in radio and then taking a radio job on campus and college. I started off reading the news and weather, but then when you have access to all of the fun toys after hours, I was like singing in the booth and recording myself and editing the news stories and putting on interesting music in between the segments. And I thought I wanted to work in radio. I interviewed at a radio station right out of college. I didn't get the job, but that's how I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for interns because it was walkable from that station. So I interviewed at WGN. It was right across the courtyard from Jerry. I saw a flyer that Jerry was looking for interns, walked over there, got in touch with the intern coordinator and ended up starting there 2 weeks later. So that was my first job.
Oh, that's incredible. And you mentioned about like working in radio, like on campus. Like it's actually quite interesting because I spoke to like a lot of people who've worked in radio before, and they've said very, very similar things where they have like the tools there to go and experience a bit of everything, and it's like a digital playground to a lot of people.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I think, and people really can find their passions in one way or another. So then going into being a producer on Jerry Springer, like how did you find the transition from going like say in front of the camera, we'll say, obviously being on radio, you're on mic, but you're being heard, to a sort of behind the scenes role? How did you find that transition? Or were you still kind of just learning this sort of
I do think it was a bit of both, learning the industry, just wrapping my head around like living in a big city. I was originally from a smaller town. I mean, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, I think there's about 1 million people. So when I moved to Chicago, I was like learning my way around. I got a job at NBC Tower. I was like still even like, I was crashing with roommates like on their couch and then, like getting my own place. But yeah, I started off as an intern. I went from intern to associate producer in a couple of months. So that pretty much translated to from taking the guests around town, entertaining the guests, to like booking the stories, pitching the stories, and then, getting them out on stage. So the timeline was I went from intern to associate producer in a couple of months. And then I went at the end of the first season of being an associate producer, I got the chance to produce my own show, which
Oh
was
wow.
crazy. So they give that opportunity to some of the associate producers at the end of the season. And that was crazy. One, I was so young. I was like 21, and I was sometimes having to manage people who were older than me, which is intimidating. I was really good at booking the stories myself, but I had no idea how to run a team. So I was just like a crap manager. I was like, look, if you book a story, come on in. And if you don't, I'm gonna book it. I'm gonna brief it. I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna do it all myself and smoke a whole lot of cigarettes at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no wonder. Like that's such a jump from such a short period of time going from intern to associate producer. But it sounds so like rewarding. Like obviously you got so much experience from that, so much valuable experience. I'm sure you learned so much. Like
Oh yeah.
I mean, for better or worse, who knows?
And hindsight, like looking back too, it's like how much of that, like you said, was learning, how much of that was they kind of have a format, they kind of have a formula, I have
Mhm.
to follow it. How much of it allowed for creativity? The creativity part was like, wow, well, this story speaks to me. Listen to this one. The creativity was, wow, I get to come up with the title. I get to come up with the chirons. I get to decide who comes out first, second, third. I get to tell you which is the 10 guest versus the 4 guest, So I would say that's where some of my experience of what makes a good story
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah, of course. And when it does come to the stories, well, you say about writing the stories, like um it's hard to kind of like sort of word this because are they based on real life examples that have happened to people, and is it like a dramatization of sorts, or are these the actual people who these stories happened?
Great question. Yeah, it was honestly the story that they called in with.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes the story that they called in with, remember 1-800-960, you might be younger than me, but they called in an 800 number and they left a
Mhm.
message, and then we
Oh,
would call them back, and then we would have to kind of like ask them a series of questions very quickly to see if they were lying or if there was truth,
yeah.
and who the players in the story were, and were they all interested in coming, and if they weren't, could we get somebody else who was involved in the story? So sometimes the stories even changed.
Okay.
What's
Yeah.
interesting is like the bread and butter of the show, like 90% of the stories were kind of like the cheating stories,
Yeah.
like husband and wife have been married for 15 years and the husband's sleeping with the neighbor. A lot of the stories were that, but what happens if the neighbor doesn't want to come? Is there anybody else he's cheating with?
Yeah. So like you're able to sort of like take the basis of like a story that's kind of quite common, but also kind of dig a bit deeper into it and look for sort of ways. I mean, obviously, there if it's like true to life, of course, but you're kind of like digging deeper, you're doing a bit of research, and then I mean, ultimately, you're making good television as a result of it. Like that's kind of
Not only that,
the
but it's
ultimate goal.
like the family element. Like I feel like
Mhm.
everybody could relate to that. So even if you can't get the person, that he's cheating with, what do her parents think of this guy who's
Yeah.
cheating? Like, can I get one of her parents to completely go after him? So we had some like hate your mates that were amazing. Like, I had this one story, you can even find it on YouTube now because some of these old stories people have like re-put up on YouTube. It was called The Springer Showdown. And it was like this married couple from LA. I'll never forget this one. And the wife's name was Michael. I forgot what his name was. And his sister hated his wife. I mean, to the point where they had had altercations in their
Wow.
hometown. They had thrown down already. So, like, it didn't take much winding up there. You know what I mean? You just needed to get them to the stage and like remind them that they still had to tell their story before beating each other up. Like,
So then, okay, in that aspect, then when people come in and you have to then contact them to bring them onto the show, what's that conversation like? Especially given like using that as an example, given the fact that the wife and the sister hate each other. How do you convince them to come onto the show? Is it a kind of thing where it's like, yes, we're just going to come on to air your grievances, and obviously at this point people are going to know about the show, so they might kind of want to come on, but I'm sure that probably is a difficult conversation, no?
that is actually interesting. like a lot of times, like you said, they are fans of the show. So like Michael, who was the wife, she said that like in reaching out. She's like, I'm a fan of the Jerry Show. I know what goes on there. And then you're like, oh, cool. Well, is your sister a fan of the show too? Like sister-in-law? Because if they are, that's part of the enticement. Like they're
Mhm.
getting a free flight, they're getting a free hotel, they're getting taken out to the House of Blues. So they'll come for the vacay. And a lot of times they'll come on separate flights and separate hotels. So you emphasize that. A lot of times they're willing to air their grievances and work some of that out because they want to know what Jerry thinks of them and they want the attention and they want the vacay. So how do you talk to them? Like, what would make it worth it for them to be there?
Yeah. That's fair enough. Like, I mean, when you put it like that, I mean, like, yeah, of course, because it 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 sounds it's like got a lot of attractive benefits for an hour of TV time.
They went the whole show, by the way. That story, like, that's the crazy thing too, is like, each show you want to book between like 3 and 5 stories because I think it was 5 segments.
Hmm.
And usually, one story will go multiple segments, but that story was so explosive that Michael went an entire segment on her own, just setting it up.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I knew she was a good guest, but she was a 10. I mean, she had the crowd so riled up to meet this sister-in-law who was making her life hell. We didn't even bring, yeah, I think we brought the sister out first before the husband. We didn't even barely need the husband there. He just had to say, "Yeah, that's my crazy sister." Those two had to be pulled apart to the point where Jerry was making jokes that they were out of breath going after each other.
So then, like, what's that like watching that unfold? Because, like,
I'm
yeah,
like, I'm getting a raise now.
yeah, it's like you've like
I'm
come up,
getting
you've
promoted.
yeah, because like you've wrote the episode, produced it, you got the story down, you've brought the guests in, but like you don't know that to what extent it might kick off. Like, so when you're watching that, like that must be kind of like, I mean, obviously the security's there, but are you kind of just like, whoa? You look at it
That's the
and
thing. I was so young, like I'm like, wow, I am literally being rewarded and getting excited about pitting people against each other and ripping each other's hair out. And I almost got clocked by one of the guests because she thought I was the other girl coming on the commercial break. I'm like, is this normal? Like, why am I excited about this?
wow, that's
Yeah. So looking back, I'm like, dude, I was so like in a sense, like brainwashed into what I was doing.
mm. But then at the same time, like, that was your job. So
I
like
was
it
good
was
at
your,
it.
yeah, well, that was your job. You knew you were good at, you were doing exactly what you had to. And then the end goal of it was to make enticing television, to help with the ratings, get more eyes on it. And I mean, it's a show that's like still talked about to this day. Like, there has been like UK equivalents. Like, I don't know if you're familiar
Really?
with the Jeremy Kyle show.
I think I've heard of
It's
that.
it's similar sort of
I
thing.
have to check that out.
But it's I don't really know how to describe it, to be honest with you. It's a similar sort of thing, but the, well, it's actually been cancelled since like the last few years. But the host Jeremy Kyle himself, like he would just berated everybody and who came in and sat down, and it was the sort of same sort of stories, like like my partner's cheating on me with my brother, and etc., and all kinds of just really crazy depraved things. But it was like this was like kind of late morning, early afternoon television too. Like it wasn't that kind of prime time TV that you would thought with Jerry Springer. This was just like you're not doing anything during the day. We flick on the terrestrial television, and there you go. It's just it's kind of like Jerry Springer was like the sort of original deal, that kind of format of show, and that's because that I mean it did brought on a few other ones as well, like Steve Wilkos.
Yeah,
He had
he
his
was
own
the
show. He
he was
was
the head security guard and he's still
yeah.
going strong. I mean, I cannot believe how long. I think it's been on over a decade now.
Yeah, yeah, like, and it just kind of shows that that sort of format works. Like, and I think for you, like being a part of that with Jerry Springer, like from the beginning, must have been like, when you look back, it must have been like something incredible considering what that kind of was created with other TV.
I did not even realize, I don't think at the time, like how big of a deal it was.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, my old intern on Jerry is like this senior producer on the Steve Wilkos show. So she has stayed in that
Oh.
format and with the same crew her whole career. I did not realize, to be honest, that the show was going to last that long. I was like, okay, this has been fun. And I was young and it was my first job out of college. I was like, I'm ready to move to LA now. Let's see what other shows I can work on. And, I moved to LA and realized it wasn't as easy to break
Mhm.
in as that first opportunity. So I spent, a couple years just having to kind of work my way back up to that level opportunity. I went from being a producer to literally starting all the way over and being like an executive assistant to three very seasoned producers, the Kyoto brothers, who did like Killer Clowns from Outer Space and Team America,
Yeah.
and they're these amazing like puppeteer creators. They're the puppet guys. So I worked for them. That was my first job out of LA. And then from there, I was kind of like able to network and work my way back into production. But yeah, I totally was answering phones there for a couple of years and, learning the accounts payable and receivable and how to location scout and payroll for 200 people on a film set. And that was not the sexy part of, you know, Hollywood.
No, of course. But that's the sort of interesting thing as well, because like you can be in a certain role in a certain job, but as soon as you leave that, there's no guarantee that you're gonna go elsewhere at the same level. Like like say you went down to an executive assistant for a couple of years, and it's I'm sure that's probably just the cutthroat nature of show business, really, isn't it?
Yes. The thing is, though, is if you're a good networker and if you're willing to try other aspects of production, I cannot tell you, oh my gosh, I've been a script supervisor, I've been an assistant editor, I've been an associate producer, I've been a field interviewer, I've traveled. You just have to be open to other positions, I think, that you might not have considered, otherwise.
Of course, but then sometimes that works out in its own way because you get all this experience, this absolute wealth of knowledge over all these different aspects of production, film, TV, whatever it may be, and you can kind of like sort of carve your own path based on that just by falling into something, just kind of seeing it's like, oh, this is here, I'll give this a go. It's like, oh, I really enjoy this. Like, it's
Or
kind
I
of amazing,
really
like what can
didn't
happen.
enjoy that.
Yeah, exactly. And
You're like,
sometimes it's
okay, I
better
don't
to
want to
kind
be
of
a
find.
script supervisor, but there are aspects of that tie into being a really good post-production supervisor. Let me try that.
Yeah, and like and on that as well, so you have your own podcast production company, Megawatts, and like I'm sure you've taken sort of everything that you've learned in your time in film and TV to be able to sort of help clients produce podcasting from an idea to a finished product. Like, so like, talk to us about that. Like, how did that kind of come about, like in the world of podcasting alone, just with your production company?
Yeah, thank you so much for the plug.
Of course.
It started, honestly, I think when I was pregnant with my first kid, I wanted to learn how to edit. So I
Mhm.
went back to school and like took a couple Final Cut Pro classes and was like, I've worked as a post-production supervisor, but all of these editors who have wanted me to be a second pair of eyes in their edit bay, and I want to know how to push the buttons. So I took a couple editing classes. Obviously now like there's so many AI apps that can create these creative clips for you, but I had a love of it. And so my first project was like walking around San Francisco, and I was pregnant, big and pregnant with my first son, and I went up to people. This was just like a project for the class, and I was like, "Can you tell me where to find happiness?" And I just stood like a man on the street and got all of these random responses to that. I went up to a cab driver and an opera singer and a Mormon and somebody coming out of a synagogue. And I just like asked all of these interesting people their take on happiness, what it meant to them, how can they find it, have they found it? And I strung that together. And one of my friends was a teacher, and she was teaching a class on how to look at the brighter side of life. And she used that little reel that I created in her class to open her presentation. And then a nonprofit in town asked if they could use it. And I was like, oh, cool. And then people started asking me, hey, will you film my bar mitzvah? Will you film my bris? Will you film this? And I was like, yeah, I do that. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's like going viral before going viral was the thing, isn't it? Like that's just like,
So
yeah,
that's
that's
how it
incredible.
started. And then, yeah, like we were saying, even with the podcasting, how I got into that was I was connected to this guy, Greg. He was a recruiter on LinkedIn, and we found a lot of things that we had in common together. He had a podcast called Next Level People. It was like him and this Sean guy. They were both recruiters. It was kind of like an industry podcast. And I listened to it and I was like, hey, I think I could bring you like some other guests that kind of go along with like what you're doing. And he was like, that'd be awesome. So at first I started off and I started like feeding him some people. And then one of the guests that was on that I felt would be a good fit for another of my friends who had launched a podcast. This girl, Kathy Heller, her show was like really blowing up and it was called Don't Keep Your Day Job. And it was about people that have turned a passion into a business. And I had
Mm.
found this guest, his name was Miran Kirkosian, and he was a backup dancer to Madonna. His dad had always wanted to be a backup dancer to Madonna. He was like first generation in America. And he went from being a backup dancer to then teaching the next generation how to dance. And he was opening a studio and he's just a phenomenal, he's a YouTuber. Check out Miran TV on YouTube. It's insane. Me and my daughter were like learning hip hop moves from this guy. And so I booked him on that Next Level People podcast. And then my friend Kathy said, oh, wow, I want to film him in front of a studio audience. I was like, that's insane. So I hadn't like seen her in 15 years, had never met him in person, yet I was matchmaking these people. So I was like, I'm flying to LA. I want to be there for that. So I literally booked my own ticket, went and filmed the behind the scenes of them meeting. I crashed with my friend. He was blowing up as a podcaster. And then she ended up hiring me for like a year to help book her guests, help coordinate her events, help book her sponsors, help run her Facebook group, become one of her coaches. I learned so much from that. And then that led to me starting my own show, to be honest.
Incredible. Like, and it's sort of like to go back to a point you made as well about network, and like it kind of just shows that how the importance of networking in the podcasting space as well. And I think it's like such a good mix of like sort of having done what you've done in production to going into podcasting, and then those kinds of connections, getting to sort of do all those things early days into podcast production. Like that's just something incredible. Like, and so obviously then you have your own show now, as we were saying, Better Call Daddy, which I think is a fantastic concept. Like it's just you interview people from all walks of life, and then your dad chimes in with his opinion to round off the show. I think that's a very, very good, unique concept. And I have to say, the episodes I've listened to, I have to say this, I absolutely love the little voice clip that you have of your daughter. I just think
Thank you. I
that is
love
the
that too.
sweetest touch to go into that. I just think it's adorable.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah, when my kids were young, it's already like the podcast has been on for like 5 years.
mm.
I created little like voice transitions of my kids. I had them say, and let's switch it over to grandpa. And you've heard from my mom. Now let's hear from
So
grandpa. And
good.
like I had them say just like funny little things like that. It's funny. I feel like in a sense, it's a bit of like a book club. Like, dad, I'll find the people that I want to interview. I'll interview them. You don't have to sit on there. I'll cut it down to what it's going to be. You listen to it separately, and then let's talk about these people. Like, what did you glean from it?
Like that's such a good like concept, and especially I know people who like would have that kind of like relationship with their family, like and they're just kind of like, I want to do something, but it could only ever be like a one-sided thing. Like it's sort of you kind of have to put in the legwork, talk to the guests, and then just use like the after the fact, like you chime in on that. And I think it's kind of good, and like your dad, like he comes across with some incredible like little tidbits of advice and wisdom, and from the guests, and like it's I really do like enjoy that. So like in terms of the format, then like how did you sort of come about with the idea to do this? And especially like 2020, obviously everyone knows what happened in 2020. Like was a connection, the pandemic and starting this, or did it all just kind
Yeah,
of fall into place?
actually, I was working for that Kathy Heller, host of Don't Keep Your Day Job, right as the pandemic started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a kid. I was like 7 months pregnant at her event that I did for her. And then I ended up having a kid early. I actually had a baby 7 weeks early. And um I didn't really want to have the nanny in the house. I kind of wanted to just because nobody knew what was going on with
Yeah.
seeing people. So I was like, okay, this has got to change. Yeah. So I had just worked for a big podcaster. I'd worked for a couple other ones. And there were things that I learned from working for other podcasters where I was just like, I think I can do this for me now. And I was like, damn, if I can get in touch with Howard Schultz for her and Barbara Corcoran for her and like all these big celebrities. I mean, she did have a big audience, but I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, like podcasting, if you have a platform, you can reach people that you wouldn't normally be able to talk to.
100%. Like that, yeah, that, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there because uh, one of the sort of most important things about podcasting, I think that people sometimes don't really realize is all you have to do is just ask people. You have to just put yourself out there. You have to ask people. Like, have you ever had it from people where people have asked you, "Oh my God, how did you land this guest here?" It's like I just asked. Like I just like got the tools to sort of find out where to contact these people, the right people, and I just asked, and the rest is down to fate, if you will. Like,
Some of it has been more than asking because, like with Jerry, I really wanted to catch up with him like 20 years later. And I
hmm,
actually got to interview him before he passed away. I had asked his publicist multiple times and I had like listened to him interviewed on other shows and speaking at colleges. And I worked with the guy, like I
yeah.
knew him. I'm like, come on.
So whenever you did interview Jerry, like compared to like when you worked like, on his show, did you get much FaceTime with Jerry as a producer on the show? Or like what
Great
was that like as
question.
a producer?
He was just there pretty much for show day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was pretty detached from the process of booking the guests.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he pretty much met them on stage
Oh,
or
wow.
backstage if you were in his green room.
Oh. I suppose though, as the host of the show, like, he's the namesake of the show, but it I think from that perspective, it kind of keeps it neutral in a sense because he's just presented with the facts as he comes onto the stage, meets everybody, he can make his own assessment, and then I mean, maybe I'm looking too deep. I don't know, but that's just kind of what it sounds like
He
to
was
me.
really able to improv.
Oh,
He was
really? Yeah.
amazing at improv. I mean,
Ah,
he had like a newscaster, politician background. So he
of
was
course.
good on his feet. He was well spoken. He was very smart and he kind of had it down.
Absolutely, yeah. So, like, when you were interviewing him, then what was that like? Just kind of having that time with him, just to chat and talk about the old days and just really kind of catch up. Like, what was that like for you on a personal level?
I absolutely love the questions that you're asking me. That is
Thank you.
such a sweet question. It's kind of like when you catch up with an old teacher who inspired you. When you get to like, for me, I had a singing teacher that was my singing teacher for 4 years through high school. And this chick taught me how to read music. And she gave me the confidence to sing in front of colleges and get a singing scholarship. So for me, talking to Jerry was like, oh my God, how much do you know about the work that went into what we did to get those people on stage? And when he first saw me, he was like, Reena, I remember you as a baby. He was like, you were right out of college. And to hear him say that
Yeah.
was so sweet. And also just to talk to him like a human
Hmm.
versus me working for him and get to thank him for starting my career. It was really like, it felt like a gift from God. After I got off that conversation, I was like, God, thank you for granting me that. That was amazing closure. Thank you. That was like amazingly validating.
Yeah, of course. And like I can imagine as well from your perspective, you spent so long working with him, but without that kind of real FaceTime because he was there on show day, but you obviously knew the ins and outs of the show of the business, and then you got to catch up with him and just like it was like kind of almost like a long overdue chat with someone who you knew so well just from having worked for like his show. And it's kind of interesting as well because when you do interview somebody who's like so like high profile, well known globally like that. At the end of the day, they are just people, just like you and me. It's just so like, when you interview somebody famous, as it were, like you just kind of like, I'm not starstruck. This is just like a normal conversation. This is just awesome. Like
I
it's
absolutely love that you picked up on that because for so much of my life, I really put celebrities up on pedestals.
yeah.
I I was so nervous as a 21-year-old backstage with him. Oh my God, for months of my shows, I was like, here's their names, here's who they want to be with. Like, here's who's cheating, like from waiting for direction from some of the executives to make sure that like they were still cool with the story I brought
Mhm. Yeah.
and like how I think it should unfold. Like I was a bit intimidated by his role and the big show and the big audience. Like even though I was doing it, I was very nervous in the beginning.
Yeah.
So to kind of get to talk to him where I don't get me wrong, I was nervous on the interview. I think that was one of my probably like pushing myself interviews. I really prepared for it. But I once he started talking and once he was so down to earth and once he remembered me and yeah, once I was able to talk about things that we experienced together, then I feel like the conversation just was so amazing.
Yeah, like it, especially when you say he remembered you from like that time ago, like that must have been so heartwarming, and like I think that in itself must make it easier to talk to somebody who you've known for such a long time but haven't connected with in almost as long, and like that's such a sweet thing.
It really, really was. And the icing on the cake was the publicist who granted me that interview. I had kept in touch with her for a really long time. She told me that the interview made her cry.
Oh, right.
I was
Oh.
like, that just made the whole show worth it. I was like, how am I gonna like up that ever?
That's it as well. Like I mean, every so while, like, because I think like similarly enough, like when the type of people we might interview, like because obviously our podcasts like separately are like they're about storytelling really. Like when you break it down, like it's a storytelling thing, hearing people's story, their experiences, and just kind of talking about that like in a nice informal way. But then when you do get that kind of guest on who has that somewhat celebrity status or is more well known, there is a small part that kind of thinks, where do I go from here? you know,
I'm even thinking that right now. Like I just released an episode with Scott Payne, and he was a former FBI director or former FBI undercover agent
yeah,
who wrote an amazing book. And he was on Rogan. He's gotten millions of views. And somebody that I knew here locally introduced me to his publicist, and it was an amazing episode. So then you're like, okay, maybe I should pull one of the stories out from out of order that more goes along with that storyline,
yeah,
right? So you're like, you want to follow up a banger with a banger. You
yeah.
don't, not all podcast guests are equal.
This
Like
is
we
very
love
true.
you all and you all have a story and there's a place for everybody's story. But if you have a 10 out of 10, you kind of got to at least go with a 9 next.
This is very true. This is very true. And you can never discriminate against your guests, but like sometimes it does just be like you can kind of judge it based on when you're having the conversation, like what the vibe's like, or when you come away from the conversation, how you feel after that. Like, and yeah, I mean, I personally I don't release my episodes like out of order at all because of the way I record them. It's just simply because of the way I record them. Like I since I started doing this more, I've like started like kind of stockpiling the recordings, but then take a month off. But I'll just kind of do them in order because I don't know if it's like a sort of diagnosed form. Be that I just have to do them in order. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. Maybe I should take that approach and just kind of like do maybe like one every day. Take one every day 1 week, take a week off another day, and then just kind of like as long as I've got the same slot every week, just release some a random one. We'll see what I feel. might be a future kind of experiment, as it were.
And it'll help you avoid burnout. I mean, my kids are off for the summer, so I'm not able to record as often, and
Okay.
I get reached out to multiple times a day. So
Hmm.
if it's not me reaching out and like really wanting the guest, they're like, "So when are you having me on?" I'm like, "When my kids go back to school." You know what I mean? That's another like topic I think is so important. Like people are always like, "Oh, how do you find your guests?" That's like a question that people always want to know. I mean, there's so many ways to find guests. Twitter's a great I have
Oh
found
yeah.
some amazing people on Twitter. Like I think that Twitter has a great podcasting community. Threads has a lot of podcasters on there. But I would tell people that are like new to podcasting, yes, be open to people that want to be on your show, but also make sure that you are reaching out to people that you want
Yeah.
as well. Like it's
100%.
great to attract people that want to tell their story, but when you go after somebody that you want, you are going to be more interested in that person that you want versus who wants you.
Oh yeah. 100%. Like, I mean, like from whenever I started doing this, I just reached out to people I knew because it was a good way to sort of not to say I use these people as a stepping stone for us, if not for a second, but it's a good way to get like that base of just who you are as a podcaster, the type of people you want to interview, and like as an interviewer, especially how you sort of conduct yourself. And it is a massive, massive learning thing. And but yeah, like once you kind of find your feet with it, don't be afraid to reach out to people, you know. And it was actually a Vinny Potestivo. I don't know if you've heard of the man. Yes, you
I
have.
know him.
Yeah,
He
you
has
know
a
him. Yes,
Springer connection too. That's really funny.
I had him on the podcast a few months ago, and something he told me was like, you know, send people a link all you want. Nobody's going to listen to it, but they're going to know that you have a podcast. People will be more people will be talking about it than who will actually listen to it. And like, you know, that's always stuck with me when he said that, because it's like that's when I kind of learned, oh my god, that is so true, you know. And that, I think that's kind of good ammo to get like whatever guest that you when you would reach out to people, you know, just like this is what I have, you know, this is who I've talked to, would you like to come on, I'd love to hear your story. And like sometimes, you know, with a bit of luck as well, you kind of get like any guest who you want, like. And obviously depending if sometimes they don't respond, but that's also another another thing altogether.
It's interesting that you brought up that point about if you have on one person and then a friend of that person might be more willing to come on. Evan Carmichael told me that in my first episode. He was like, "Hey, like if by having me on, somebody that I'm connected to sees me on your show, they'll be more likely." And he
I
was
think
like,
so.
"Feel free to leverage that." He's like, "Nothing makes me more happy." And he was like, "If you have on one of my friends, then like let me know." And even the fact that you just mentioned Vinny, I will reach out to him and be like, "Hey, your name was dropped on this episode."
That's
And it's
awesome.
a great way to just stay connected to people.
Oh,
Like
for
I could
sure.
send this now to Evan Carmichael. I could send this now to Vinny, like after it airs. Like every time someone is mentioned in an episode, I will let them know and sometimes even create a clip for them with their name in it.
Amazing, love that. Yeah. Yeah, Vinny was awesome. Like I absolutely loved interviewing, and I think like Vinny was one of my first interviews that I kind of like used in a different, not my first interviews, but like when I sort of branched out from interviewing people live on Twitch into a different kind of way. He was like I think he was the first person I interviewed, and like it was so surreal, but it was the kind of first time I just like learned that somebody who has been, you know, around all these like celebrities, worked in all these things, they are just people, and like they have a story and they want to tell the story. And it was like that episode with Vinny was enlightening for me.
I'm going to listen.
He was an absolute sweetheart of a man. I had a great time with
That's so great. Yeah, I had heard Evan Carmichael interviewed by, I think, Ryan Holtz.
him.
And when Ryan interviewed Evan, Evan said in episode that he loved being people's first. So even though I had interviewed some other guests, I hadn't launched my show yet. So I reached out to Evan and was like, "Hey, I'm about to launch this new podcast. I heard that you like to be people's first. How about I'll air you first?" And he went for it. He loved that. Like, no questions asked. Because sometimes just listening to people on other people's podcasts and using their language will get you in the door.
100%. When you talked about leveraging, leveraging people's names, and that's like a perfect example of doing that, because it's, in a sense, it's like it shows that, to your prospective guests, that you have listened, you've taken an interest in something that they've had to say, and that goes like a much, much longer way, I think, than people realize. You just show that you are a fan of their work, and that you're not just trying to get them on for the clout or whatever it may be, or just to help with exposure. It's all it takes is just kind of a little bit of effort. And plus, I think as an interviewer, when you pick your guests, how many times are you just doing it because you personally think it's a good episode, right? Whenever I reach out to my guests, I'm just like, I want to hear this. This sounds great.
It's funny because that just reminds me of Springer. The ideas that come to you can spawn other ideas. You're like, I would have never thought to. I had a guy reach out to me and he was like a sperm donor dad to 25 people. I'm like, well, that's an interesting daddy story. I was like, I would not have thought to cover that, but I like it. I'm going to make that the title.
It fits in with the title of the podcast, though, doesn't it? If you look at it the other way,
sperm donor daddy. Yeah. I was like, totally. And then I had another girl reach out to me. She was like, what about fatherless daughters? I was like, great title too. And I wouldn't have thought to go there. Yes, I want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of shows how there's such an infinite scope with this type of podcasting, with interviewing, with the stories that people can tell, and it's I think it's such a special thing being able to hear people's stories, talk about them, and just kind of share that with other people and share that with a wider audience, because there's always going to be people, I think, who will resonate with it in some way, but who might not feel like they can be heard. They might have something in common with what they're hearing, but they might not be able to feel the voice, or they feel like they're the only one. And it can really go a long way for a lot of people. It is incredible. Honestly, I'm very thankful every day for being able to do this, and then podcasters like yourself as well, just because it really just brings all the storytelling to life.
It's so true. And what else is interesting is don't let AI take over your entire podcast, because I totally started with not using AI at all. And like you were saying, I had some guy contact me about a rare medical condition. There could be somebody else that gets that rare medical condition, and that's literally all they're searching for. And that could have been the only time he's told that story.
Yep.
Put that rare condition in the title, and I guarantee you for years to come, people are going to be searching that term.
Oh yeah, 100%. There is something for everybody, and sometimes it kind of comes to people when they really need it most. To use that as an example, that could have been saving grace for somebody, who is just looking that up, and it's I found a podcast on this, and then they tell people, and they kind of tell how it helped them, and maybe I'm romanticizing the whole thing about a storytelling podcasting, but that's how I like to think that it kind of goes, and it snowballs out with people.
I love the snowball, and it really, really has just led to so many crazy opportunities for me. I mean, I'm getting ready to work a podcasting event a couple hours away. I just got that job today where it was I would love to attend that. And then one of my friends who's worked the event for 5 years, she was like, oh, well, would you want to work it? I was like, oh my God, I love going to events. Usually, I have actually worked for other people helping plan events. I'm like, they're looking for somebody to be a room manager. Cool. I get into the event free and get paid. Yeah. So that just happened. And then, after you attend other people's events. You can even create events of your own on a small scale. And I've done that.
Yeah.
It's like I go to different networking events and I have clients around town. It's like gather your little people of like your community that you've created and that you resonate with and find a bar that wants new customers. Say, hey, we throw in a first round of drinks. I've literally done that where a venue's like, oh, wow, you're going to bring me 25 to 50 people. Yeah, we'll give you your first round. I'm like,
Yeah, 100%. Like, and again, it just kind of highlights the importance and the power of networking, especially within podcasting, because you don't know who other people know. Like,
oh
and
my God,
is
so true.
just, because you could reach out to somebody, or somebody could reach out to you, and it just, it seems like a good fit for an episode. It just seems like a good story. But then, like, well, take this for an example, right? So, like, I mentioned Vinny Potestivo, you knew Vinny, and it's just like, well, there you go. That's like this sort of a nice full circle moment of networking, I think. Like, that's incredible.
And I love that you've had a good experience with him and I've had a good experience
Mm.
and then it tied into the story. That's so cool.
Exactly. No, it is just honestly is incredible. So obviously, yes, you being a podcast producer, so I just wanted to kind of sort of maybe round it off with just this one question. And if you were to give any advice for people who want to start up a podcast but they're unsure about how to start, what would you sort of say to any aspiring podcaster?
Great question. I would say think about your why because you're really going to need a strong one.
Absolutely.
Right? So for me, like my dad always wanted his own show. And I'm like, okay, well, I know the tools to give him that. So we started off, I kid you not, he started off with like those Apple earbuds that are like, I don't know, $18 on Amazon. And he was like, at first, just talking into that mic. Then we upgraded to the Yeti. Now I have a Shure mic. Don't spend too much money in the beginning. I would say find the people that you would love to have a conversation with that will give you grace, that are fans of yours. I've interviewed somebody I went to college with. I've interviewed my grandmother. I've interviewed clients, happy clients, not ones that, were ready to never talk to me again, but interview your cheerleaders, interview people who would be excited and interested to have a conversation with you and just practice. I would say think about like 20 people that you feel like know you in different ways, have been parts of different chapters and just try it. And if you don't want to do an interview podcast, maybe you want to mix it up with a solo episode, ask ChatGPT
Yeah.
for suggestions. ChatGPT could literally, like, if you're a business owner, what do you do in your business? What are you doing now? What are you doing in the future? Who are your clients? What are your most frequently asked questions? That's 10 episodes.
Oh yeah. Like easy. It is just like when you break it down like that, like it really is just a sort of ultimately you just have to get in and do it. Give it a go, just show your passion into why you're doing it, like you say, have your why. But you might not find your feet until you get at least 10, 15 episodes in. Sometimes it might take you a while.
50. I
Well,
would
there you
say
go. Yeah,
50
50.
episodes until you are like comfortable on the mic, comfortable with the technology, you have some self-assurance and play with the different recording
Oh
softwares.
yeah.
There's
Yep.
Zoom, there's StreamYard, there's Riverside.fm, there's Google Meet, there was Skype. There's so many different ways to record. Find one that's easy for you. Honestly, Zoom is easier for my dad, but if I'm having a celebrity, I might use Riverside.fm or I might use Zencaster or I might use StreamYard. Everybody has like their comfort level with different tools, but there are so many tools now. Riverside even creates clips for you. There's Opus clips. There's InShot on your phone. There's apps that will wipe watermarks off. There's apps that will add music. There's apps that will create cool visual effects. Start easy. Like, figure out why, figure out what you like talking about, figure out who are your people, start a Facebook group, find a place where your community gathers, come to Twitter, search hashtag podcast, guest on somebody else's show. that's talking about what you like to talk about. You can literally go on Listen Notes and search different subject matters. You could search reality TV, who's talking about reality TV. You could search games. You could search mompreneurship. Find who's currently releasing episodes on things that you like to talk about. Listen to some of their podcasts, comment on their podcast, and be like, hey, I have something to add on to that conversation.
Oh, 100%. And the comment feature on podcasts is one of the most slept on things on any podcast platform because no one does it. Like, I have seen episodes that you just know have thousands and thousands of downloads, but there's about 6 comments. And it's like, you know, if you really want to be seen for the reasons that Reena just said, comment on the episode on whatever platform you're listening to it on. Will get seen. They will know you are paying attention. They'll know you're tuning in. They'll know you're a fan. And if your intentions are to to be seen, to network, that will help you. That will go a long, long way. It is. That is advice to live by, Reena. I would 100% say so. And I have to say, I'm glad you said that you'll find your feet by like episode 50, because I did just hit episode 50, so I'm very glad about
Congratulations. Woo! Most podcasters don't even reach that.
I know, God, like most people don't even hit double digits. Like it's insane. It's insane. But here we are.
Here we are, and you're doing amazing, and I can't wait to see the next 50.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Reena. And thank you so much for your time tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Honestly, I appreciate you taking your time. And I just would like to give you the floor just before we do round off, just for the listeners to see where they can find you and your work and Better Call Daddy podcast and everything.
You are such a gracious host, and you're an amazing interviewer. And I'm so glad you made this pivot into having conversations like this. You can find me on Twitter at Reena Friedman Watts, LinkedIn at Reena Friedman Watts, Facebook, all the socials, and bettercalldaddy.com and Better Call Daddy on YouTube. And like Andy said, comment. That will grow your following on any platform. Creators take notice to comments and reviews. Please leave this episode a 5-star review. Make sure you're subscribed and leave Andy some awesome feedback.
Yes, please do. Please do. I could do with it. Once again, thank you so much for your time, Reena. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 53 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Massive thanks to Reena Friedman Watts for taking the time to join me on the show today, sharing your story, experiences, and just for an all-round great conversation. I had an incredible time chatting, and I hope you all listening enjoyed it too. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, my link tree in the About section has everything from socials, merch, website, all of the good stuff. A follow, rating, share, it all goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.